Well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Live. Glad you've joined us. I'm here, your host, and joined at the table, as I always am, by the edgy Satanic performance to my dwindling Grammys audience viewership numbers, Samuel David Kemp. What is up?
Oh, not too much, Daniel. Good to be with you on a Thursday.
That is sort of our running gag that we just sort of constantly move the show later and later in our quest to finally drop our episodes on a Sunday. I'd say this isn't Wednesday or Tuesday or Monday like it used to be. This is the new home of the Collision Live.
As Bob Dylan once said, the times, they are a-changing.
They are. So again, this scheduling stuff, it just made sense for us to once again move it. But hey, we hope you guys will still find us again, join us for Thursdays until we end up moving it to Fridays. But hey, we're feeling good. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. I feel like we're just sort of in good moods. We were grooving to a little Miley Cyrus flowers.
I'm going to buy myself flowers.
Sam was sort of just revealing a lot about his musical taste before we went live and kind of his affection for Miley's tunes. So we're feeling good, but there is a lot of interesting stuff to get into this week, a lot of sort of cultural conversations for things going on in culture that as Christians, I think it's important to kind of be aware of and engage with and just sort of have healthy conversations about that. So if you're joining us live, I encourage you guys, jump in the comment section, share your thoughts, join the conversation, share your opinions, correct Sam's opinions when they're wrong, but this... Love to have you be a part of this, sort of talk about this together. But like I said, we do have some interesting stories to get into, so why don't we just jump right into it with some cultural conversations. So the first, the first notable... Obviously, if you guys have seen the thumbnail, the biggest story, we got the Satanic Grammys. We'll get into that in just a minute and kind of do a deep dive into some of that. But maybe to start things off in a more, a less devilish theme, and I think maybe just a more positive theme is that turns out that Jesus has once again proven to be a bankable Hollywood star. The Chosen, the very... successful, popular, kind of crowd-funded, faith-based TV show, streaming show, which is for free on streaming, and it's in their third, just finished their third season. Kind of in the last little bit, they've experimented with taking Jesus from the small screen into the big screen through Fathom events, and kind of they released a Christmas special, and they released the first 2 episodes of season 3 in theaters. Well, they just released the finale, the final 2 episodes of season 3 in theaters, and kind of a surprising turn of events that at least on Thursday, last Thursday, the debut day that they released this, The Chosen finished in first place. Get a gold star, get a gold medal. So they topped the box office for Thursday.
The Chosen was chosen for a day.
It was. It's just bizarre because if you're watching our video version to just see The Chosen ahead of Avatar, The Way of Water. Finally dethroned that other.
Didn't have that one on my bingo card.
the indie flick. So it finished number 1 with $1.6 million on Thursday. Throughout the course of the whole weekend, it ended up finishing in 9th place with $3.6 million. Still kind of an unusual total. It's kind of a success for something that is in limited screen. This isn't a wide release. Every theater in America is showing Avatar: The Way of Water. This is more limited. They're more selective and choosy in where they show it. So I don't know. What do you think of this? Because I think there's several... I'm a little more tempered in my excitement for it, although I think it is obviously pretty cool news. But what do you think when you saw this?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the fact that, I think it's cool news. I think also this is perhaps a way forward for some faith-based shows or properties. And I think it also just shows that when you have a pretty big base and following, that you are able to then translate that into other events, like doing a limited release in theaters. And so I think it's cool to see them sort of experimenting in these different ways of how they release their shows. And I think it's cool to see.
Yeah, because I think it's one of the we did a post on this on our website, thecollision.org, and I obviously I think Hollywood in general isn't necessarily super like sympathetic to the message of these films. So that's
Sure.
not the typical kind of thing. But they are sympathetic to making money. That's what Hollywood does. And I think even the topping the box office for a day, even if it finished ultimately in like ninth place, with a total that really isn't maybe as impressive as some of the headlines and like some of the cheering might make it seem to be, still a success to make the top 10, especially for like a niche sort of thing like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really cool for them and what they're doing. So like, no shame in like hitting the top 10 in a week of your release.
Yes, and I do think, like I said, not just be like Debbie Downer and like but was it really a success? I do think because even the total, like the final total, what was it? It was like 3.6. Like I think the previous shows and the two times they've done it, like were like in like 13, 14 million. So like even compared to itself,
Yeah.
it's a significant decrease. And part of the reason it was able to top the box office is because like the closest competitor, Avatar, is like being in theaters for 8 weeks, and like because it's sort of like a crowd funded, like for the base of people that love the show, it obviously like very much front loads the box office. Like I think it's gonna have like really long legs and like become this big breakout success. Like it kind of seems like it's more, there's a lot of people that really love the show, and those people went and saw it in the theaters.
Yeah, well, and I think and making it top the box office for a week, I think also just if nothing else, it's good publicity, right? Like it's maybe getting it out to a little bit of a wider audience. It's just getting some positive buzz about it, and so I think in that sense, I think it's really good to, like you're kind of breaking out of the app or whatever you use to view it, and so you're kind of, who knows? Like it doesn't sound like it is, like there's just tons of non fans,
Chosenites or whatever
whatever they are, that are going to see this, but it's at least kind of, it's making some headlines. And
because that's what that is, like I think this is definitely a success. I don't want to like pour water on like it wasn't really a success. It's cool to see that. I think sometimes we can get maybe a little too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
And be like, see, we're making an impact. We're changing Hollywood. I think some of it's sort of understanding like what is accomplished. Like if the goal is to like get Christians that like the show to watch it in the theaters, then that's successful. If the goal is to kind of draw in outsiders and like really contribute to like the mainstream Hollywood schedule and stuff, like I think that's probably less likely. But I think, like you said, because there is sort of this buzz, and it's even this weird, like I follow the box office anyways, like all these pundits that are like, and they still haven't opened in like India and like all this, like I eat that stuff up. And it's funny to follow, and like, none of these are all like very Hollywood pundit people. Like they're all forced to talk about The Chosen and like why it did so well, and like I think it does sort of get it out there.
Yeah.
So like, it is making a difference. Maybe just not as much of like, see, this is such a this is just like we beat Avatar. I guess
right. Yeah.
Maybe like reel it in a little bit.
Maybe a small asterisk there by like number one. Like just hey, like it's amazing, and I think it's really good. But again, like it wasn't going head to head with, whatever, some Marvel movie that was released. This, like, you would just never release this the same weekend as a big blockbuster. Like they would never do that. And so like because it's like a down season in box office, then so I think that's great. That's a good strategy.
Yeah, and it's almost like the equivalent of like the low budget horror movies where like it also it cost way like this.
Yeah.
The whole series probably costs like what they pay like one Marvel actor for like a month of their time, if not more. So so it doesn't necessarily need to make tons of money to be as successful as like it doesn't need to make like $1 billion like Avatar did. Have you seen The Chosen?
I have not.
What about throw a crew on the spot? Have either of you guys seen The Chosen? Are we I feel like that's something that Steven would watch. Have you seen The Chosen?
I haven't watched all the way through, but I did go see the new ones in theaters when it dropped. So I mean, I was kind of made me want to go back and watch the rest of it.
Was the theater like pretty full, or were?
No, we went there I think it was the second or third night, but I think it was just us and maybe like another couple in there, so it wasn't too packed, honestly. So honestly, it's kind of shocking seeing those numbers.
Yeah. Well, when I think even it is sort of I think because it was so front loaded, I do think the legs. we don't have time now. At some point, I'll get into. I've been pestered so much to watch The Chosen that
I know.
that I actually started. I've seen the first 3 or 4 episodes, and maybe I'll reserve my thoughts until I've got deeper. But my initial is that I can see why a lot of people really like it.
Yeah.
And I can also see why I don't think it's going to be the show for me, which is not a bad thing. It doesn't need to be the show for me.
Yeah.
I'm but one man. But hey, let us know what you guys think, if it's cool. And also, if you guys did go see it, if you guys saw The Chosen on the big screen, just sort of what that experience was like, what it was like going into the theater, who was there. Kind of love to have a conversation about that. But something that we definitely do need to have a conversation about, whether we want to or whether we don't want to, is really the big story of the week. The Grammys. This thing has been kind of all over the interweb, all over the socials. People were talking about this thing, which is clearly the intent of the thing, is to make people talk, make people mad. Because hey, the Grammys need some more PR and attention. So what better way to do that than to dress up as Satan and perform in a ritualistic circle while singing raunchy and degrading songs. So that is what happened. Again, if you guys haven't kind of followed some of the story behind this, the Grammys happened, when was that, a couple days ago?
Yes, had it not been for this performance, I don't think anyone would have noted that the Grammys happened, but
yeah, it turned out there was actually a Grammys award show that also happened on the same
accompanied
night.
this
that
performance.
So Sam Smith, who's this sort of interesting, controversial, but influential, and he's just in the news a lot for various reasons. Performer, he performed with Kim Petras, if I say that right, kind of their hit duo song Unholy, and they did it in a very devilish aesthetic. So if you want to Google it, you can find it. Although I don't think it's necessarily must-see viewing. But it's he sort of wore devil horns. They're all in red. Kind of had this like weird like lit up circle, and these like dancers that were around and like sort of doing some weird ritual stuff and pyrotechnics behind flames.
Which in most cases I'm a fan of pyrotechnics, but I guess when it's Satan themed.
Not when they symbolize hell, perhaps, but
yeah.
And then like the Kim is in a cage and she's like dancing and singing, and so it's this whole thing happened, and of course, as is a surprise to absolutely no one on this earth, people had thoughts about it. People were quick to get outraged about this and to share their thoughts and kind of fit it into the narrative of like, hey, we've been saying Hollywood's satanic for a long time. Like,
we now
behind the scenes,
we now have proof.
All you doubters, take a look at Mr. Sam Smith up on that stage. So you kind of had this whole thing, and I think there's a lot of things to get into with this. But why don't you, your initial thoughts on this? Like, did this performance speak to you in any meaningful way?
No, it didn't. Other than I think my initial reaction to it was just I just kind of feel bad for Sam Smith. Like, it just seems like a kind of pathetic cry for attention. And again, I don't know the guy, and I don't really follow his music, but it just, more than anything, like, I wasn't offended by it necessarily. Like, would I prefer it not be Satan themed? Sure. But it's like, I think more than anything, it was just, I kind of left feeling this is just kind of sad and pathetic. That was kind of my,
because that is like,
that was my takeaway. It's
like if I had to like sum it up in a word, I think this whole thing is like pity. I think there's a lot of this kind of brokenness, and I do think also that this is like kind of across the board an example of just picking low hanging fruit, like both by the performers and by the people responding to the performers. Of like in some sense, like the saddest part sort of about this performance is like, it just feels tired already. Like this like very edgy. And one of the I think is one of the saddest things that I've seen, what I just came across today, is that apparently it underwhelmed not just Christians but Satanists. So some of like the equivalent of like a Catholic cardinal, but for the Church of Satan, was giving an interview like about this and basically saying like, man, like it's like Little Nas X, like, he did that way better in his Call Me by Name, like his music video,
like 2 years ago.
like 2 years ago, like this thing's being done, like the costume was cheap, it's too on the nose, and like it's just like even the Satanists are like, nah, this just feels like it's this
Not for me.
it's just like it's this party trick that like seemed kind of cool like in the moment, but like now it's just become this very low hanging of like, if you want to be edgy, then like just put on some horns or like adopt Satan.
Yeah, and I just it's, I don't know. Like it is a very sort of tired trope. And it's not like it's not edgy though. And that's the thing. It's like if you want to be edgy, that's not the way to do it. And like Lil Nas X, if he was edgier, and I think probably did it better. And it's like you're doing sort of the exact same thing that someone else has already done, like whether it's Satan themed or otherwise themed. It's like, well, that's not like, if you're trying to be edgy like that, you're just, I don't know, it just seems kind of lazy. Like you're just recycling something that's already been done, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of like creative thinking to like, how do I be provocative and like change? It's just like, what's the most extreme on the nose thing? I put on some horns, like dress everyone in.
Turn all the lights red.
Turn all the lights, get some flames going. But I do think even from the other side too of, because this is the case sort of across the board whenever there's sort of this like Satanist aesthetic.
Yeah.
Where like, I feel like there's sort of this overblown reaction from like the Christian side or conservative side or just family, decent people side of like, like that we sort of buy into it, that like on that stage, like he was literally communing with Satan himself. Like rather than like, this is just sort of a cheap costume designed, to provoke people. But like, there's no, like, I don't think he is like we can get into a second. Like, I think maybe there are some satanic things being pushed and represented on the stage, but like the fact that he was wearing horns and they turned their lights red, like that's not the thing. I think Christians should get outraged, but I think we miss the things we should get outraged on, because it's like anytime there's like the Little Demon Show or like any of these sort of even like this after school Satan club, or like anytime you just see like Satan and satanic.
Well, Satan is a trigger word, right? Like if we want to, like, you put Satan in front of it, and it's like, there's going to be a certain segment of the population that's going to react exactly how they reacted, and they're going to quote tweet it and say, this is pure evil. And it's like, well, that's kind of what they were going for. Like, Sam Smith was trolling a bunch of, conservative Christians because he knew they would react the way they would, or his, managers did, or whoever. And so it's like, we too often, I think, react to the wrong things. Like, again, like Satan, not a fan. Like, it's not good necessarily to have Satan themed songs or dances or performances, but it's like, to me, like that's less of an issue than like perhaps the lyrics of
because that's what I wanted to get into, as far as like yes, that is an evil, but is it evil because he like went to the like Spirit Halloween shop and like got a costume, or like is it evil? Like the verse that was coming to my mind as I was thinking about this whole thing is Matthew 16:23, where Jesus kind of rebukes Peter and says, like, get behind me, Satan. Says, you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. And like sort of framing that like what sort of satanic thinking is not a scary costume. Like it's almost the opposite. Right. It's this seductive sort of like ways of thinking that go against God, not just sort of this provocative, like Satan or Jesus sort of refers to Lucifer as like, this like angel, this like, of light, and like very much like it looks good, that's why it's dangerous, not like it's just this scary monster and it's gonna come get your.
It's red leotards and a pitchfork.
Because one of the quotes there, not Smith, Petrus was sort of talking about the inspiration for the performance, and this
was
is
it Satan?
Yeah. Well, we were thinking about hell, and we thought we'd be. But this is what she said. It very much, I think, frames it in what I think is the bigger issue, rather outside the costume. Says, I think a lot of people honestly have kind of labeled what I stand for. Again, transgender, and Sam Smith identifies like non-binary. as religiously not cool. And I personally grew up wondering about religion and wanting to be a part of it, but slowly realizing it didn't want to be a part of me. So it's a take on not being able to choose religion and not being able to live the way that people might want you to live, because as a trans person, I'm already kind of not wanted in religion. So we're doing this take, and I was kind of a hellkeeper Kim. So very much like, I feel like the crux of this is not even like a spiritual thing, as far as like, let's pull out a Ouija board and like actually try and commune. Like, I doubt either of these performers actually believes that Satan's a real person. Like,
Sure.
it is very much we're sort of against religion telling us what to do. Like, we're sort of, it's a very kind of anti religion, because even the song itself, Unholy, if you aren't familiar, it almost gets lost in the shuffle because we're focused on like the aesthetic. That like the lyrics itself are about like a unrepentant husband that like leaves his wife and kids behind to like constantly go like have affairs and sexual encounters, and like how very much like the sexual liberty thing of like, you know, the poor wife like is says he left the kids at home so he can get that mommy don't know daddy's getting hot at the body shop doing something unholy. And like, to me, like, that's evil. Like, that is like satanic thinking of like very much against the family, and like, you know, abusing like your wife and kids to go indulge in the sexual pleasure. Like, that to me is the thing that Christians should be like concerned about, not the fact that like he dressed up for Halloween in February instead of October. But hey, let us know what you guys think. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff with that. I encourage you guys to, and not just self-promote myself, but we'll be dropping like a kind of a longer article on this on collision.org that kind of gets into a little bit of that and just sort of how Christians should respond. So I encourage you guys to, if you guys want to kind of go deeper in how do we respond to this, check that out. But obviously, definitely a talking point, but maybe get past some of like the surface level outrage to like focus on the things that I think will have a longer lasting rather than like a tired like sort of devilish party trick. But one of the things that honestly I don't think ever goes out of date or gets old, this is as timeless as time itself, which is the next segment of our show. We have Host Corner. So I'll be honest, the Bible says that, you know, Christians should not covet. They should not lust after things. It also says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God and need to repent. So this is going to be one of those moments. This is a confession hour for me. So if you guys didn't see this, then get out of the rock you're living under and follow the up-to-date Lord of the Rings Lego news, because Lego Company just announced, debuted their new upcoming set, the first Lord of the Rings themed Lego in like 15 years. This thing, Rivendell, the city of the elves, the last homely house this side of the sea. This thing is gorgeous. Again, if you're watching, like, if you're just listening to the audio, think of like the most sublime, like Michelangelo painting, and then like this is like that level. So this thing is like 6,000 pieces. This thing is obviously, this is my precious. This is what I want. And to make matters even more tempting, this thing comes out on my birthday. The pre-orders for the VIP members is the day before my birthday. The regular peons can order this the day after my birthday. So this sort of bookending that day of the year with this. This seems like, hey, God speaks in mysterious ways, and sometimes he speaks quite on the nose. So I am definitely already at work on my wife to convince us that this is an essential budgeted item. But it does drop for the tidy sum of about $500. But so what is your? Because we're very like pro. There's no shame in a grown up.
No, Legos are for everyone. Yeah, no, and there's no. I won't be ageist when it comes to Lego. No, you should definitely like. I'm a huge Lego fan. Like, just putting them together, like it's one of the best therapies, I think. Like to build. To do a Lego set, and I've been doing them my whole life, and so I fully support you in this endeavor.
It's essentially what like back in the day, like, making models was like acceptable for like grown-ups. Like it's become that like this is
because they've just like
it's hard. Like this is like
next
super
level.
Detailed.
What are the dimensions of that?
I don't know. You can see in the my wife feels like it's not big enough for the price. I beg to differ. I think it is perfect. But it's just fairly substantial, and like you can kind of move the pieces if you need to like separate it. Like so, I've already been looking at the place in my shelf and stuff where I think that this should just complete it. So hey, I have about a month to convince my wife that she loves me enough and that the kids maybe don't need to go to college. But hey, we can stay home from college and look at my new set.
Well, the kids can get scholarships.
Yeah, they can't touch it, they can't play with it, but hey, I might let my kids look at it. But moving on to kind of our next the next thing, and this is one that we'll see what we want to how we want to approach this. Really, for me, I just wanted us to address it. This is a story that just sort of got lost in the shuffle of all this outrage as Christians for Sam Smith and it's Satan at the Grammys and there's this actors and Hollywood's bad and Hollywood's coming for our kids that I feel like we get so caught up in that when a good thing happens in Hollywood, it's almost like we're so drowned out in our anger.
Yeah.
That we miss.
Well, I think anytime, I think it's maybe just a feature of when things go counter to the narrative you already have in your head about something, that it's hard to notice it even. And so I think this is one of those stories that it's so counter to what Christians think and believe about Hollywood that it almost doesn't even register. It's oh, well, does that happen like that?
Yeah, and this is sort of the I guess the antidote to this sort of this way of thinking where we think of Hollywood as this thing. We as Christians, we're against Hollywood. We get those comments all the time of I just can't support Hollywood, as though it's one person, not thousands of people and industries and kind of interworking parts. So this is we'll play a short clip from this. This is Letitia Wright, who is a talented actress. She's known for many things, but specifically probably most well known for playing Shuri in the Black Panther movies and the extended Avengers, and kind of a Marvel star. Young actress, up and coming actress. She's great in the last Wakanda Forever. Obviously stepping into a bigger role following the death of Chadwick Boseman. So she is sort of one of these bright stars in Hollywood. And I've kind of seen over the years that she seemed like a very grounded person. She sort of mentioned things about God and faith. But she just recently was awarded an honorary doctorate from University of Guyana, which is where she's from, and she gave it's about a 20-minute acceptance speech. Obviously, we're just gonna play a minute or so of it now, but it's well worth watching. She shares her testimony. She's well spoken. She's articulate, and just kind of sharing how God got a hold of her life. So why don't we just play a short snippet of this, because I think it's worth watching, and then we can maybe discuss a little bit of it.
Continued to happen throughout my career. And then 2015 comes. I think I'm on top of the world. I think everything is worked out and planned for me, but God had other plans. He saw a young girl who, yes, I had dreams and yes, I have purpose, but he saw a young girl that could go into the depths of depression by chasing something that was not tangible, that was not real. And I wanted acting for the wrong reasons, and he confronted me with this reality. Why do you want acting? I want to be loved, I want to be accepted, I want to be successful. And he taught me a very important lesson about the lowly seat, and about humility, and about purpose. So he stripped it away. He told me to give up acting. Why are you telling me to give up acting? I have 2 solid roles, one with Nicole Kidman, one with these famous Hollywood actresses right at my feet. Why are you telling me to give it up? Because I want your heart. Because when I have your heart, it cannot be tainted by what the world has to offer, and it will stay pure. So I went on this journey to find myself and find God. I went on this journey for true self-acceptance and love within my own heart, for my own self, not by what anyone will validate and tell me that I could be, but what God has told me I could be. So I went on that journey, and I fell in love with God. I found peace. My mental health was improving. My joy was back. The meaning of my name, Letitia, is joy. My dad picked it. Shouts out to my dad. And as I was in my room praying, just filled with so much joy, I finally found peace, because I have a spiritual connection, and I just feel good about my life. God comes knocking, it's time to go back to acting.
I mean, like, my goodness, like,
Yeah.
she nails it. Like, again, the whole interview, I think, or the whole acceptance speech is worth watching. She kind of gets into some spiritual stuff throughout, but that's the snippet or whatever that at least to me popped. But what is your?
Yeah, no, I totally agree as well. I mean, it was a fantastic acceptance speech. I mean, yeah, she nails it, I think, and it's incredible to see. And again, I think it's a great reminder to all of us that we shouldn't think of Hollywood as a monolith, as a thing, but it is a sort of a loose association of a bunch of different people and organizations, and some of whom, like Letitia Wright, like are following the Lord's direction and making an impact in the world around them. And so she has this sphere of influence that, most of us will never have. And so rather than like constantly rail against Hollywood, the thing that she's working in, I think it's helpful to remind ourselves that no, there are actually people in Hollywood who do love the Lord, who do, follow God and want to honor Him in their talents and their abilities, and they're doing the very best that they can. And rather than just sort of, I think, shaming the whole thing, just focus on those who are making a difference.
Yeah, and I think also just like I think it would be a great acceptance speech in any circumstances.
Yeah.
Just the fact that like, as we're praying like on the collision and stuff, like thinking of this story side by side with like the Grammys and the Sam Smith stuff. Like,
Yeah.
Just the like display of just total contrast of
Yeah.
very much like the Sam Smith picture stuff is very driven by like, no one accepts me. Like I need to sort of make this public spectacle and provoke people to pay attention to me, and because I can't find love and like all this sort of stuff. And then like to see from like Letitia's perspective of like, hey, like I realize none of those things that like Sam Smith's pursuing are gonna satisfy me. Like the joy that I finally found was like in God, and like I don't know. I just thought it was the contrast.
Yeah.
Like, and then I part of why I wanted to even show like a longer clip is just to. Like I feel like we can be guilty of that too. Of like, it's so much easier to just like, what are the outrage stories of the week, and like, what is the bad Hollywood this week,
Right.
and miss the fact that like, hey, there's a lot of good stuff happening in Hollywood, and like good people that God's at work at. So hey, let us know if you guys were familiar with that speech. If you check out, again, keep plugging ourselves, but hey, this is our show, so we can do that. Thecollision.org, we have an article on the speech where we link the entire acceptance speech. So if you want to watch like the whole thing, encourage you, check out the website.
Definitely worth watching.
Definitely worth watching. But maybe kind of the last story of the week, and we don't need to get super into this, to this story, because this is one that's still, like kind of yesterday is sort of when everything hit the fan for this one, and people started talking about it. But Bethany Hamilton, who some of you might not know by like name, but you probably know by story, sort of the inspirational story of the surfer who, what was she, like 15 or 14?
Yeah, I think 15.
Where she was surfing and a shark bit her arm, ultimately lost her arm, and a very strong Christian believer. And like miraculously, like I think it was like 3 months after she lost her arm, she was competing competitively in surfing again. Like she had taught herself how to swim with one arm, and like that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
She's I think 32 now, so she's still competing. Obviously, kind of getting near the end of her career now, and I think she's like publishing books, and she's doing a bunch of other stuff. But she is sort of, and like the movie, I think 2011 perhaps, Soul Surfer. They made a movie based on her life, which is her. But she's back in the news yesterday or this week for speaking out kind of against a new transgender policy that the World Surfing, what's it called, the World Surfing Association, World Surfing League, that they just sort of implemented. It seems without any kind of like feedback or discussion. They sort of made this.
No input from.
Yeah, very top up. Made this decision that to sort of allow kind of trans surfers based on like testosterone level, if they're below it or above it, like that they can compete in sort of the women's division. So she made Bethany Hamilton made a Instagram video where she kind of spoke out against that. In the video, she kind of says, she starts saying she strives to love to have love for all mankind, that it's not coming from like a place of hate, but that she has serious concerns about how that impacts her as an athlete, and how it some of the concerns by like the other surfers and stuff that didn't have the willingness, I guess, to speak publicly about it. So she made that video, and like very quickly, people, as should be expected, perhaps, like quick to jump on like with really some ugly stuff, like even like on like Twitter and stuff, like the hashtag like Team Shark, like a bunch of people, like, I never thought I'd be on the side of the shark, basically implying that, hey, it'd be better if the shark just ate all of her instead of her arm, so we didn't have to have her question whether this was appropriate. So she released, I think after that, she released a follow-up Instagram video where she kind of doubled down on the positions, and she just has concerns. She's heard from other people that, that kind of saying like, she as a woman feels like she's more than just
testosterone
level that perhaps that there is clear differences. Kind of what she is saying is like, I think they just need to have a different division, because whatever you think of the trans stuff, like clearly there are differences, and like it just doesn't seem fair to kind of put them all together. Obviously, this isn't the first sport that's dealt with that. So what are some of your thoughts? Sports just seems like it's always like the hot button for these sort of issues.
Well,
but what are your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I think sports is really where like the ideologies and the ideas around transgender kind of comes home to roost, because this is where it has like real world implications. It's not just about like your feelings and your preferences. It's like, no, there's a physical reality that comes to bear when you start saying that, well, biological men who identify as female can now compete in a female arena. Like that has massive implications, and it shouldn't just be like, oh, well, we don't want anyone to feel left out, so let's just do it, which is sort of how I think every other arena kind of just says, oh, well, like we want to be inclusive without giving any thought to how that affects everyone else in a given demographic. And so I think, as would you might guess, that sports would be the place where kind of the rubber meets the road for these issues. And I think it's good for Bethany for voicing those concerns, because like she said, she's not the only one who has these concerns. Like I would imagine most of the female athletes in her sport are going to have the same concerns, because you look at male and female, they're different, and the body types are different, and their advantages are going to be different. With surfing, like it's surfing is an interesting one, just because it's so dependent on nature. So it's kind of an interesting case study for like the
like
particular,
how much of the effects.
Right.
Like,
It's like if it's like wrestling, or if it's like MMA fighting or hockey, like there's going to be clear advantages to being male. With surfing, I don't know. I haven't really studied it enough, but like so much of even how it's judged, it's closer maybe to figure skating, which again, like those kind of sports, which are there's more nuance to the judgment. There's not a head-to-head sort of aspect to it, where it's like, well, you happen to get on a good wave and you were able to utilize it in this way, and you did these tricks and you pushed the limits given the wave you had, and which is totally different than like you went in and beat this person like one-on-one. So it is interesting, I think, and I think there's a lot of nuance within each sport, but I think it's a conversation that has to be had, and I think, in her defense, I think it's good that she is at least making the WSL have that conversation, which I think if she didn't speak up, would it, like, it sounds like it's not even a conversation in their mind. It's like, well, we're just going to do this because we don't want to be considered bigoted. But it's like you give no thought to the effects that's going to have on the women. Yeah, sort of like
who else pays the price. Because kind of the two things for me is like, obviously there's the one aspect of just in her videos, although she doesn't really get into like the ideology of it, like, but just the like, when the Bible says that God made man and female and like his image, like, is there more to that reality than, well, because one of them had more testosterone and one didn't?
Yeah.
Like that's sort of what she's saying. Is like you can't reduce it down, like. But kind of the second side of that is like, even if you don't, like in her case, like even if you don't necessarily get into like whether or not people should accept transgender. Like she's saying, like, but there are clear differences that like we need to at least have discussions for how you implement that. Like,
Yeah.
you can't because I came across a quote from People magazine, but it was on their website, which summed up a lot of this to me. Where kind of as a tagline at the end of the article, it says other WSL surfers supported Hamilton in the comments, while many other athletes and followers critiqued her belief. And like to me, that's just such a telling of like it's like the women that are like the ones actually impacted by this decision seem to be very much like, yes, this affects us. This is a conversation we need to have. Like the ones that sort of can like pump the movement or ideology like, from their keyboard and like other athletes and stuff. But like it's not a.
It has no bearing
them
on their life whatsoever. They can just sort of say all the.
Then it's easier to be like,
Team
whatever.
Shark.
It's just just surf better if you feel challenged. Like that's easy for someone to say that's not a surfer. Like
Right. Yeah.
But the ones that are there, like, it seems like she has pretty, I don't know, universal, but like she has heavy support from those.
Yeah, I would think so, and I would think, and I think probably is the same case with a swimmer, in the I forget, it was like a Pennsylvania university or something, where he transitions or identifies as female, comes in and dominates women's swimming. It's like I'm pretty sure most of the women on that team were not in favor of that change. It was kind of forced upon them, and so like I'm not surprised if most of the people in the women's WSL would be supportive of Hamilton's position.
And it
in
does
this
seem,
case,
kind of like you said, like where sports is where you really see the impact. Like I tend to have a positive view of it. Of like, I feel like that's like when you see the wider consequences of just sort of thoughtlessly implementing it. Like I feel like that very much is gonna there'll be more Bethany Hamiltons or people that speak up or be like, hey, regardless of the ideology or the sexuality itself, like there's got to be a better way to like implement this rather than just sort of completely doing away with the God created reality of like body differences.
right? And I think that's where like your ideas that you formulate online and think about, like they kind of, again, the rubber meets the road when it comes to like physical realities and sports. And I think that's where like your ideology comes up against reality, and it's like, well, you can't deny the differences of these physical realities. And so I think once again, I think it's a good thing to bring this to bear in sports. And I think it's a great venue to have these discussions, because it makes the most sense to have these discussions like when it's in a sports arena.
Yeah, and it also is another case of a strong Christian kind of out in like the world and the culture that's like taking a stand, speaking up, and like being sort of on a voice to the people that seem like they are not getting a voice in this situation. So we'll see sort of what comes from that. Again, I'm sure there'll be more, but I do appreciate too just her, if you go watch her, they're on Instagram, her videos, like just refusing to be baited into the ink. She kind of says like she knew, like, obviously she knew she was going to get pushed back and hateful comments, like, and like she's just not going to get kind of swept up in that wave of like, no pun intended, of sort of like the anger and pushing back. Like she's just going to stand for these people kind of out of love. So I feel like it's a powerful testimony. Kind of final thoughts here. I don't know if you anything else going on this week that is notable or.
No, I don't think anything notable coming up. No.
Other than that, you feel like the Holy Spirit has been at work as a prophet to tell my wife that her husband really needs a Rivendell Lego set.
I can certainly put a nudge in that direction if you like.
Just drop a few hints. I will say too, I saw last week, is it Knock at the Cabin, the new M. Night Shyamalan horror movie, which, hey, if you're looking for a movie about a same-sex couple that needs to sacrifice one of them to appease the apocalypse and the wrath of a vindictive God, playing in theaters. Check your local AMC listings. I actually thought it was somewhat of an interesting movie, although I think mostly it didn't work. Although I think there was some interesting stuff. But if you haven't seen that movie, and if my summary of it doesn't just completely scare you away from it, you can check out our Collision review for that. But most of all, guys, I want to thank you for joining us here on a Thursday, the first of many Thursdays. Hopefully, we won't be moving things around. So hope you guys are joining us next weekend. There's always stuff to talk about, always cultural stuff. And I think it just is healthy as Christians to stop and reflect and to engage and have these conversations. So we hope that you will join us in doing that. If you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel, like the video, all those sort of things you know to do. But thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.